Hello there, this is Pradeep Talloju from Provis Software. You're watching the second part of the two-part series about Apigee API Management. In the first part, we covered an introduction into Apigee, and then we looked into the network topology that's involved. In case you missed the first one, check out the links in the description. In this part, we'll go over provisioning and configuration of Apigee components. We'll then do a demo of setting up a proxy for a backend API, and we'll then test it out. We'll also publish it onto an API developer portal provided by Apigee, and then we'll log into the portal and examine the services, and we'll test it out from there as well. Finally, let's also take a quick look at the analytics that Google provides with Apigee. I have already registered my account with cloud.google.com, which is a Google Cloud platform. And from there on, I go to console and I would create a project. I actually have a project that has everything enabled, but I would like to just go ahead and create a new one to show the various steps involved in creating a setup for yourself. So let's go ahead and create a new project. I'm going to click on the existing project console and then click on new project. In here, I would say my Apigee project 2 or my 2, and then I would leave the rest all as defaults and click on create. This takes me to a wizard wherein actually to a notification pane wherein I see the projects that were created. The one that we just created is right here. So I am on the console of the new project that we just created. So the first thing is the prerequisites, which we are already covered with, creating a GCP account, and then we also created a project. And then I would go into Apigee provisioning wizard. I would go back, take the project ID, and then add it here. It checks for availability. It brings up a new set of options here. So I'm going to go ahead with an evaluation. So I will go with start evaluation, and then it starts giving you a wizard with all of these steps. The first thing is enabling APIs. So I'm going to click edit and enable APIs. It may take a minute or so, and then it gets enabled. Basically, we're going to let the default network be used, and if you are specific about only allowing a certain range of IP addresses, you could select this and actually give the IP and then the range. But I think we're okay with just letting it automatically allocate the IP range. We would do that and click OK. About a minute or so again, and the networking is enabled, and you could go ahead and select the location, the region rather, of your analytics and runtime location. You could select any ones that you would want, ideally the ones closest to you, but you could basically leverage the network of GCP or Google Cloud for quick access. It's not definitely an instantaneous operation. It takes a little while, maybe up to half an hour or so. So don't wait on it with bated breath. Just make sure that you start it off and maybe go around when Apigee evaluation organization is ready. You get an email, so you can come back to this screen. So once this is done, you click on edit for the routing, and then here is where you will make a few decisions. One thing is you want to either keep it internal, only be accessible within the network, within the VPC that you have created, or you could enable internet access. It depends on who your audience are. In most cases, the consumers are outside the enterprise as well. So if that is your case, then you would enable internet access. So you can just enable this, and it is going to create an external IP for you. So anything that is um, activated or requested on this address goes to a load balancer. As you can see, an external IP .nip.io is the location for the load balancer, and that load balancer is going to route all the requests to a compute engine. So if you want to provision or rather if you want to enable internet access, then you would provision all of this. You can select your default network as the subnet where you want to provision all of this and be accessible for, and then you can set access. In this case, I am actually not going to do this. Again, it is once you enable it, if you're doing it for the first time, if you enable it, this is also an operation that takes a little while, and once it's ready, your gateway would be ready for use. As soon as that is ready, you also have a API that is pre-built for you to check if it is actually working. The API is named Hello World. So you can basically, once you have your external IP assigned, you can go in there and say, HTTPS external IP that's given to you, replace it with the IP, and then .nip.io/hello-world. So that will be your test API to check if the proxy is working. So if the load balancer is actually routing it to the VM, and then it is getting a response back from your API management Apigee that is out there. Okay, so now to the project where we have everything ready set up. From the instances that you see here, I know that instance 1 is for the target API, and I can go in here and quickly check if my API is working. I can see that there is a response in the XML format for the get operation on this URI. So we're going to use this as the endpoint URI to invoke from our Apigee runtime. So to do that, let's go on to Apigee UI and from there configure this. I go back to Google Cloud Platform and I will check for Apigee. And it will take me to the Apigee UI. So this is where you would configure your API proxies. I'm going to click on API proxies, which will actually show me the ones that are already there. We're going to create another one. Let's call it V2 because I already have one with the same name. So from the menu here, I'm going to use a reverse proxy, which is the one that's commonly used. And I'm going to say student info V2. That's going to be my base path as well. And I'm going to say it is supposed to connect with this backend API that we just verified. So I click next, and then I'm going to just do a pass-through and use the defaults. I'm going to click next, and it is going to show me where this would be deployed. I'm going to go ahead and ask it to deploy as well, and then I will say create and deploy. You will see that this is created and deployed, and I would go back to the proxy list to verify if the one that we just created exists. I can see that there is student info in here, and I click on it. So this is yet to be deployed. As you can see, this is 0% deployed. It is working on deploying the first version that we just deployed. So let's wait for a little while, and once we know that it is deployed, let's go ahead and test it out. So a few seconds later, you will see that this is deployed on eval.org that we created when we provisioned. But after this is complete, you can quickly go ahead and check if there is anything that you would have to add in. So I would go to debug to first run it through the gateway and then click on send. So that shows that you actually were able to invoke it through this gateway. Go ahead and click it on a browser, paste it on a browser and get the response back, and you would see that this is the same response that you had seen when you invoked the backend API directly. So back to our Apigee API UI, we can do a few things here. To add a mediation, let's say I want to convert the response that I receive from my backend API into JSON. I get it as an XML. So I'm going to look at this pre-flow, or rather this response here, and click on the step. So this is where I want to add a step, and that step would be to transform from XML to JSON. As you can see, this has a lot of uh, options here related to traffic management, related to security, and mediation. The one that we are currently using is a mediation. You could also use some extensions and actually customize, really do a coding to make changes to the response that you are sending out. But for now, we'll go just use a conversion from XML to JSON. And you can see once I add this, you can see that there is an XML to JSON icon that appears here, which is going to convert our response back into JSON. So now that I have this, I'm going to click on save, and this is supposed to be submitted as the next revision for deployment. I'm going to go back to our deployment, and it's on revision 1. I want this revision 2 to be deployed. So this is a deployment, and I would say go ahead and deploy. You can see on the status bar here that revision 2 is yet to be deployed. As you can see now, it is on revision 2. So let's go ahead and try to invoke it again, this time on the same API. And now, as you can see, it shows a JSON as part of the response, which means the response actually from backend API is still the same. We did not change that, but the Apigee runtime used the mediation that was added as part of the response and converted this from an XML into a JSON object. The dashboard here allows you to go back and revert as well. So if you chose that you wanted the XML and not really the newer version, then you could still go ahead and update it so it goes back to the previous version. As you can see now, the revision 1 is in line for deployment, while revision 2 is pending an update, which is basically a revert. And as you can see now, it is on revision 1, which is in green, and you still have an option to go back to if you decide so. So I'm going to go ahead and do one last check to make sure that I'm getting the XML back, which means it is on the first version, and I do get that. So now let's go back and take a look at what it takes to publish this onto the dev portal. Now that we have this deployment in place, as part of your Apigee dashboard, you also have a navigation here to the publish, and you can go into API products. So let me go ahead and say I want to create a new product, which could be named Student Info V2, and I'm going to use the same name here as well, Student Info V2. And then I'm going to say I only have one environment here, the eval, so I'm going to use that. And then I would for now make it a publicly accessible API so anyone can test it out and use it. As you can see, it also allows me to put in a quota there So this is, let's say I want to let the total, really not anyone, total requests that are going to be served is 100 requests per minute. And then I am going to let the rest of the default stay as is. The one thing that I need to add is the actual operation. So I'm going to have student info v2 as the API proxy that is going to be added as part of this product, and the path for that is, as we have seen, student info v2, and I'm only going to have the method get there. And if there is any specific quota that you want to allocate specific to this operation, you could do it. I'm going to make it 60 per minute, 60 requests per minute. And then I will leave the rest as is and click on save. We are ready to save. Once saved, this product should be available from your developer portal. So I go back to the dev portal here. So in the dev portal settings, you have a few things that you can set up here, but we are only going to quickly go over the API part, wherein I'm going to say I want to add the newest product I just created, student info v2, that I want added and visible as part of my dev portal. So before I do this, I would also have to, if someone has to test it out on the dev portal, then I would have to upload the specification, open API specification for the one that we just created. So I'm going to call it published, mark it as published, and then I am going to add the API specification. So let me go ahead and say select an API spec. Okay, so I have my spec here, and then I'm going to click on select. If you would like, you could have a image in here for the API that you have just exposed. I will leave it as is, or maybe let me select one from the existing ones that are provided. You could update this a repository of images if you wanted to use a specific one for your specific API. I'm just going to use this one that's already available, and I'm going to click save. So it gives you a dialog box that says that your API is ready and available on your dev portal. So let's go back to dev portal here and try to go to the live portal so we are able to access it from there. So I'm going to click on APIs, which will show me the list of APIs that are available for me to test out. So I can see that there is student info v2 with the logo, or the image rather, that we just used. So I'm going to click on this, and then it is going to show me the definition of this API. So I can see that it is allowing me to execute and check the method out. As you can see, the HTTP request is going through HTTPS onto this location that we had just tested out, and I'm going to click on execute to see how the response looks like. This is what the response is. It is slightly rendered, but it is still the same contents. So as you can see, you can use this as UI, wherein your developers can come in and check out what is available for them to utilize, and then even try to execute them and run. They have a list of, they actually have the specification, the schema of how they are supposed to expect the response to be, and what needs to be filled in as part of the request, if there is any, and then get to know about the API more. So that's all I have for as part of the demo. We've seen this, and let's go and take a look at analytics next to see what kind of analytics we have from this API gateway. Let's take a look at the API monitoring dashboard that Apigee provides. As you can see, I just went down on my navigation bar on the left side and clicked on timeline. As you can see on this, there are a lot of drop downs, and based on the ones that you selected, the appropriate graphs show up. We haven't done much of testing really for these graphs to be really composed of a lot of bars, but still you can see that there are graphs related to the proxy, total traffic, errors if there are any, and the latencies related graphs as well. With respect to the latency, you also have a list of specific records with the values that if you want to play around, and if you also want to see, you want to add some caching based on what you have on your latency, you can probably figure that out as well. There are a lot of other items here as well. If you only want to get the recent ones, you can check. You can actually have this auto refreshed as well. You can toggle it to auto refresh, and you will see that this is updating live. You can go back to the weeks range, so you can have more data here, and you can see that there are multiple APIs that were invoked during this past 1 week. Like I said, we do not have a lot of APIs built in here for us to actually see a lot of complicated graphs, but you can get an idea of what you can make out of this. If you would like to specifically go ahead and create some alerts, then you can click on this alerts tab, which will take you onto this kind of console where you have your monitoring set here, and based on certain conditions you can invoke certain alerts so that you have your appropriate action taken based on the alert that you have. So we will not go into much depth on these alerts for now, but just for you to know that there is an option to do that as well. Like I said, there is an AI component in the Apigee X here, and if there is any action that you want to take based on the algorithms, you could do that as well. There are more tabs here you can play around. At this level, you can see that there are so many hits for each of these APIs. A few other graphs here as well that you could use. You can see right now in our developer portal, we only have one dev registered. So you will not see a lot of variety of data here, but in case you have a lot of developers in your team that's working on this portal, then you would see based on the developers who's actively using which ones, and based on that you can make certain calls as well. We can go back and take a look at this one thing here, the API proxy performance. Here you would basically get how each of these, you can drill down to a certain proxy, either you can do it for all or for a specific proxy, and take a look at how the traffic is behaving, the number of hits and average response time, basically all the metrics that you would want from a given API. A nice dashboard and some alerting mechanism too for you to handle and make some insightful decisions on. Apigee comes with a lot of API management features, and it is a pretty mature product. It has implementations across multiple geographic regions and multiple industries as well. It is considered a leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant for full lifecycle API management. As we have seen and discussed earlier, this comes with multiple deployment options. It allows for a pure SaaS implementation on the cloud, or it also allows you to use a VPN on the customer site. The API developer portal that comes with Apigee is based on Drupal and it is highly customizable. In fact, for banking solution, there is a developer portal that is very specific to the industry. There is a strong industry focus and API accelerators by industry. With that, I'll conclude this session and I hope you had as much fun as I had bringing this content to you. And until next time, bye bye.